Well, guys, Tears of the Kingdom is right around the corner, and man, it feels good to finally reach the end of the long and arduous journey that has been waiting for this game. I know that Zelda games usually take a while to be developed, but we've waited longer for Tears of the Kingdom than any other Zelda game, as far as I know, I think at least. Yeah, and Tears of the Kingdom was the first Zelda game that I followed during its development. 4 years we've been waiting for it since its reveal. So yeah, it's been a long wait that is finally coming to an end. The longest development of a Zelda game. Could be due to COVID or because they're just being very ambitious. I would guess that it's probably a bit of both. So, seeing as the game is coming out very soon, I wanted to take a look back over the years at my own Zelda experience and how I've come to know and appreciate the series and what games I was introduced to it with and just why the series is important to me, I guess. So to start off, I'll go like all the way back to the beginning. This must have been in like the 1850s. I went into Best Buy with my mom and she got me a 2DS. I really wanted a 3DS, but she was like, no, it's too expensive, so I got the 2DS, but I didn't really care because I got to play the 3DS library, which is all that really mattered. You're so freaking grumpy, Jesus. With my first few years of playing games, Mario was really what I was into. It was what my friends got me into. It was what I kind of grew up seeing other people play a lot, which made me really want to play it. And I don't know, just the concept of it was so like simple and it made so much sense. And it was the first series that I really got immersed in. Mario Kart 7 was the first game I had for my 3DS, or I guess 2DS, and I would play that a lot with my friends on the bus, along with New Super Mario Bros. 2 and Smash Bros. For 3DS. Now, Zelda, I think, was something that I initially found out about from watching Nintendo content. Zelda, I guess, was, I don't know, like a risk that I wasn't willing to take, because I was like, yeah, this is like maybe one of like 3 or 4 games that I'm gonna get this year, so maybe I'll just stick to Mario. And I also never really had any friends back then who played Zelda. I had just like heard about it from like online sources mostly. I mean, I heard some people mention it, but the games I mostly played were Mario Kart 7, NSMB 2, Mario 3D Land, Animal Crossing New Leaf, and Tomodachi Life. Those games were like the big heavy hitters that I distinctly remember playing like a lot. There's also Adventure Time Hey Ice King Why'd You Steal Our Garbage, which is an Adventure Time game that is structured after Zelda 2, which is a fantastic game. So I guess that's the closest I ever got to playing Zelda, was a kind of Zelda-like, even though Zelda 2 is completely different than every other game in the series, but still. So the 3DS and Wii U era of Nintendo kind of started to die down a little bit in 2015 and 2016. And man, those were really rough years for Nintendo. They released a lot of just not great games, and so for a while, about a year, Nintendo became sort of a thing of the past for me, as it probably did for a lot of people. Yeah, no one really knew where the company was going, and I really thought that I was kind of done with it, because I had found other ways to experience games that I just found to be more enjoyable at the time. Until, however, one day when one of my friends was talking about some Zelda games that he was playing. I think it was Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword were the ones that he was talking about. I don't remember specifically what in the game he was talking about, but I was intrigued by it, and I asked about what Zelda was and what the game was like, just trying to see if it was something that I would be interested in. And he talked to me about it and his experience of the series, and he told me about like how like quests were structured, how you have main quests and side quests, and how you have to like venture into dungeons and solve puzzles. The puzzle solving is, I think, probably the main thing that drove me away from Zelda early on, because I was like, yeah, my brain is not smart enough to play games like that. But this conversation that I had with my friend piqued my interest and made me want to dive deeper into that topic, which is exactly what I did. I think the day I got home, I looked up Zelda on YouTube and I just started watching videos. And of course, one of the first ones that I saw was Peanut Butter Gamer's videos on Zelda. Yeah, I distinctly remember hearing the song Lost Woods for the first time, and I remember thinking, like, that's such a Nintendo song. I think just hearing that and seeing some more footage of Ocarina of Time just sort of painted this picture of a whole other side of Nintendo that had been there all along, that I just wasn't looking at through the proper lens, I guess. But it felt like a more thoughtful, slightly more mature type of experience. And coincidentally, my friend got me into Zelda right at the time when the Switch and Breath of the Wild launched. And at the time, I think like PBG's latest video was like 50 ways to die in Breath of the Wild. And I watched that video, and it was the first time I ever saw Breath of the Wild, and because I didn't even know that the game existed. I didn't know that there was a new Zelda game. That was kind of how I found out about it. And that video was a very weird way to be introduced to the game. It was a very like weird kind of context, very different from watching like a trailer for it, which is what I did after I saw his videos. I watched his like full review on it, and I had heard that Nintendo had just released a new console, but upon hearing that they did, I wasn't initially confident that it would be something that I was interested in. But after seeing Breath of the Wild and learning that it was a console that you can play handheld and on a TV, I became more interested in it. So before I discovered Breath of the Wild, I was definitely familiar with the concept of open world games. I had played a lot of Minecraft at the time, but I think a better example, and one that's more comparable to Breath of the Wild, would be Just Cause 3. Earlier that year, I had watched my friend play that game on his laptop, and we would take turns just kind of flying around and blowing stuff up. The movement in that game was so fluid and satisfying. I remember I could spend hours just traversing the world in that game, and it never felt stale because it was so satisfying to control. But one thing about Just Cause 3 is that the world itself felt very like one note. If you had been to one location and done quests in that one location, then you had pretty much been to every other location and done quests in that location. So when I saw Breath of the Wild, I saw that there was a lot more variety, and Breath of the Wild's world just felt so much more meaningful. Another video I watched when I first got interested in Zelda was a compilation of every game in the series, from the oldest to the newest, that also had the consoles that they were on listed below the names, so I could see every game in the series and where I could play them. And I mean, I love organized list type videos like that. And it made me think that I should try and play every game in the series, maybe before I play Breath of the Wild, as unrealistic as that sounded. But I saw that the first game was on the 3DS Virtual Console, so I decided to buy it. And again, coincidentally, that meant that the first Zelda game I ever played was the Zelda game that inspired Breath of the Wild. And at the time, I didn't know just how much Breath of the Wild deviated from the Zelda formula. But anyway, after beating the first Legend of Zelda 3 times over the past several years, I'm definitely of the opinion that it holds up a lot better than people generally say it does. Because apart from, yeah, kind of having some stiff combat, I think if you remove a lot of the cryptic nature that that game has, then it becomes an incredibly solid game that really does stand the test of time. There's this really cool guide that I found from Nintendo Life, and that does kind of ruin the mystery of exploring that world a little bit, but I mean, it's not like you're gonna find a ton unless you, like, burn random bushes and bomb random cliff sides. But anyway, back to the topic of Zelda 1 being my first Zelda game. Like Breath of the Wild, Zelda 1 doesn't really hold your hand at all. It just gives you a sword and makes you pick a direction. I remember making my way to the first dungeon and beating it and feeling very accomplished, because I definitely hadn't played a Nintendo game up to that point that didn't guide me in some way. Of course, my first attempt at playing through Zelda 1 did not end in me beating it. I think I got maybe to the third dungeon, so yeah, not very far. But yeah, I was very engaged in that first playthrough because it really was unlike any game I had ever played, despite being probably the oldest game I had ever played at that point. And I also had no idea that it was probably one of the closest things I could come to actually playing Breath of the Wild at the time, seeing as they actually made a Breath of the Wild prototype as a top-down game in the style of Zelda 1. So a little while after experiencing the first game, I went over to one of my friend's house, and I didn't know it, but he had Breath of the Wild on his Wii U. And when I went there, I got an opportunity to play the game, and all of my time hanging out there that day was spent playing Breath of the Wild and playing through the Great Plateau. During my first session with the game, I spent like a couple hours playing, and I never even realized that the Great Plateau was cut off from the rest of the world. I know that the old man explains it, and the text is kind of like right in front of you, but I don't know, for some reason that bit of info just didn't register in my mind. I didn't question why I needed to get the paraglider. I just was like, yeah, I need to get the paraglider because having a paraglider is awesome. Despite not registering that I was stuck on the Great Plateau, I didn't try to leave it. I just kept exploring, and I never even like reached the edge of it, I don't think. That's just how cool the Great Plateau is. It's the like perfect tutorial area. It has very natural applications for all the mechanics you would need to learn. It's the perfect way to prepare you for exploring the rest of Hyrule. So that day, unfortunately, I only got through 3 shrines before I left, and after that, I told myself, yeah, I need to get a Switch as soon as possible so I can play this game. It's easily the most excited I've ever been for a new piece of hardware, and probably the most excited I ever will be for one. I don't know, I'd love to be proven wrong though. So yeah, once I got the game, I spent probably like a year just like combing through the entire map, just like searching for everything. I'm gonna check my Switch right now, actually, see how much time I have in the game. I don't even know how many playthroughs I've done. Let's see. Okay, it says I have 570 hours in the game. So yeah, Hyrule's just kind of an amazing place to explore. One of my friends told me this last year, and I totally agree with them, that both of us kind of are more familiar with Hyrule than the city that we grew up in. And I'll just say I am very good at Hyrule GeoGuessr. So that's Breath of the Wild. I know I definitely have so much more to say about this game, but I don't know, I kind of want to save a lot of it for when I decide to like write a full review on it, but I've also played some other Zelda games over the years as well. I think the first one I tried playing after Breath of the Wild was Ocarina of Time, the 3DS version. And I don't know, I've tried to start playthroughs of Ocarina of Time multiple times. I've gotten most of the way through the game. I haven't beaten it yet though. Ocarina of Time has definitely been a hard game for me to get into. I haven't been able to bring myself to finish that game yet. I definitely am at some point though. I've started a lot of Zelda games. There are some like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess that I've like booted up in emulators and played for like a few minutes. but I don't really count those. There are actually still a ton of Zelda games that I have yet to play through. I mean, both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I played through about halfway through Link Between Worlds. It was last year that I decided to try and beat some of these games, and I decided to start at the beginning, like how I wanted to do it back in 2017, and I started with the first one. I replayed it. It was my third playthrough, and I had a really good time beating the first game because I was using this really well-designed guide that made it a very fun experience. Zelda 2 is, even if you take out the cryptic progression and the absurdly hard combat, I don't think it quite hit the mark. It has a great soundtrack though, and after playing Hey Ice King, it's made me want Nintendo to go back to that formula of Zelda and try and make a modern game out of the Zelda 2 template, like kind of like how they did with Breath of the Wild. I really don't think that's ever gonna happen, but if they decide to do that, that would be really cool. Then there is Link to the Past. Now, the first time I ever played Link to the Past was on the original Super Nintendo. Back in 2018, one of my friends brought over their SNES with the Super Mario World plus Mario All-Stars cartridge, and we played that for a while, and they let me borrow it and just keep it at my place, and over time we bought more games for it, and one of those was A Link to the Past, and that game has become one of my favorites in the series. The music especially the theme in the first 3 dungeons, it's like that is probably my favorite dungeon theme in all of Zelda. It's so like eerie and ominous, like it makes you feel like you're being watched by something. And then the trumpet kicks in and it's like, wow, it builds tension so well. And then there's Link's Awakening. Now, I've only played the Switch version of Link's Awakening. I've booted up the Game Boy version, haven't played through a ton of it, but yeah, the Switch version of Link's Awakening in particular, it captured the dream state like really well, I think. Like, it feels weird, but not like Majora's Mask weird, just kind of random weird. Like, okay, there's a Kirby trying to kill me. The NPCs don't really talk incredibly coherently, and I know that like a lot of old games have dialogue like that, but I don't know, it just feels very purposeful in Link's Awakening. So yeah, those are the Zelda games that I've played. I wish you all the best of luck with your Zelda endeavors on May 12th. I think it's going to be a really special experience, and I expect I'll probably make some sort of first impressions video for it. So yeah, if you want, leave in the comments your own experiences with Zelda and Breath of the Wild. I would certainly be interested in reading them. Okay, bye.